Okay, so I'll go to the full presentation mode here. So I will not be able to see your messages during this time. However, if you have any questions, we have a 15 minutes question and answer session after this entire presentation slides are over. And then I'll answer your queries, and I'll allow you to unmute yourself to ask a question as well. So, my name is Amit Siddhartha, and I am the CEO at MetaPercept Technology Services LLP, which is a Pune-based IT solutions and services company. We have been there in the market for almost 10 years now, and I am the CTO with another company called Data Expresso Technology Private Limited, and I'm also the technical director with AppSet Cloud, which is a New Zealand-based company. And this webinar is about the professional certification program in technical writing, API documentation, and information architecture. So, just to uh, welcome you all for this webinar, and I would like to let you know that this webinar contains the following topics like the introduction on the topic that what this webinar is about. Then I have already given you a small brief introduction about me, and then I'll be giving a brief introduction about the MetaPercept, and then we have some understanding of the relevance of technical communication in engineering, and explore API documentation, data XML, and then what are the career prospects and why one should go for certification program, uh, and what are the benefits of this entire program. So we'll be talking about that also. And as we move forward, so this is about me, and I have been in this industry for almost 25 years now, and so far I have got 5 companies that I have established, sold off, and then currently 3 companies are there on which I'm active member. And I have been also working on the information architecture side, software development. So I'll talk about the MetaPercept also. So MetaPercept is a company which has been started with a mission to uh, educate people about information science. So we all know, and why this webinar is very important for all you engineers, because there is a huge industry gap, like a demand and supply gap from business point of view. I'm saying, which is actually the knowledge and skills versus the implementation of these skills. This gap is there increasingly. It is bringing this gap in our industry in India specifically. And I will talk about that as we go forward, that what is technical writing, why it is important, and how engineers should come forward to become a technical writer or an information architect and be part of the main engineering core system within the Indian IT space, Indian IT industry space. So MetaPercept was started in the year 2016, and we started with a very small team of just 2 people. But now we are a strong 62 people company, and we could have grown more. But then we have a very niche skill set in which we work, which is information science, and we provide solutions and services around information challenges that the companies, big enterprises, are facing. And in this webinar, I'll be talking about how, as an information solution people or engineers, how do we help it? So the purpose of this webinar is to helping engineers transition into high impact careers through technical communication skills. And these are a couple of our clients with whom we have worked. So not just this one, this is, and there are plenty more. These are just some of those big names we could fit into our slide. And then I will talk about communication. So in engineering, we all know that there is a information engineering or communication chapter where we talk about the types of communication. Then we talk about information management, content management, and all that stuff. And if we look at the holistic view of anything that we work on from engineering perspective, everything revolves and evolves around information. If there is no information, then nothing can be achieved. However, In India, the primary focus has always been on the engineering side of an application development, or from the mechanical perspective if we talk about. But if you look at the ground level, without having any information, no project can be delivered, no application can be developed, and no product can be delivered or developed. So information is very important. And the irony is that in India, the focus on information development, information engineering, information mapping has been very minimal. Mostly people who are working as technical writers in the industry has been from the language and mass communication background, which is a non-engineering field. And me being in this field for almost 25 years now, I see a great gap in the learning approach of non-engineers versus the engineers. So there are a couple of areas where engineers can certainly improve and certainly contribute to the success of the entire IT industry, because couple of years ago, I would say a decade ago, India was more into the services side, and most of the activities were around the back end activities, like working on the application, developing database, providing some services solutions. And that's how everything evolved. But now, with Make in India, our entire objective has to be changed, and we have to develop more and more information and meaningful information that other engineers who are working on the project can utilize to develop better product or optimize the products in a better way and make it a world class engineering example that India is not just a services oriented country, but it has high end engineering skills also. And this engineering skill certainly is supported by the high end technological information that are available in a very structured way and which can be easily consumed. So, technical documentations are always critical for any project. Even if you do a project at your college level, you will see that you have to write the project synopsis, you have to write the project details. And without having a background of the project, it gets extremely difficult to develop that application on which you're working or deliver the project. And you have to always submit the project report, right? So imagine that at a college level, if you are struggling with so much of information challenges for dealing with some project, then how difficult it would be for big companies or big organizations who are planning or who are working on big projects of a high scale or of a high value project. That means their information is more important, communication, or rather technical communication, is more important. So here we can see that documentation is extremely critical for team collaboration, understanding between the architecture team, development team, back end, front end. All these teams have to share information with each other. Then software development. If imagine that SDKs were not written properly, how difficult it would have been to consume those SDKs. If you are using some APIs, how difficult it would be if those APIs were not documented properly, then how difficult it could be for the engineers to understand what this API does. And same way, if we are working on the engineering side of that, that is the hardware manufacturing, assembly, all these activities, because now we are a semiconductor country as well, because there are so many companies, semiconductor companies investing in India, and big plants are being set up, and 100% they will all require top class engineers. And all those engineers, when they go onto the field to work on such projects, let's say assembly of a microcontroller, it can be very difficult if there is no proper description provided in a written format. So if there is no data sheet about some, let's say, components, aware like what all components are required to build, let's say, a motherboard. if those kind of details are not available, if those kind of details are not documented properly, how difficult can it be for the engineers who are working on the ground? And here, no one better than an engineer can understand the technology, understand the technicalities needed, and put that in a written format like data sheets, spec sheets, user guides, API guides, SDK guides. So there are so many things that has to be done from the engineering and technical communication point of view. Then there are compliance and user guidance. So obviously, when we work for the enterprises, every project has to follow compliance because it has to be sold out to the entire world, and entire world has so many compliances. If you're developing or manufacturing products, medical equipments for the health tech domain, then there are so many FDA guidelines because every product which has to be sold at the across the globe at a global level, they must comply with the FDA guidelines. Then if there is a hardware that is manufactured, it must comply with the ISO guidelines. And then there are certain SOPs, which is the standard operational procedures also, that need to be provided with the technical documentation. So, you know that this technical communication essentials are so much needed with the engineering skills, that you can see that if you just alone go with the engineering skill, this is the career growth curve. So you grow, but not so quickly. After some time, you become director, VP, unless you're very lucky to become Sundar Pichai or someone from Indian Institute of Technology joining the big firms as the CEO or CTO director. But then, if you have these technical communication skills, essential skills, then your impact, the impact on the entire industry is extremely, extremely like a good growth that we get to see. And you know, the importance of technical communication is so much needed in all these industries. It is not that it is only related to software domain. You can see that we have industrial sector like power sector, then manufacturing sector, then we have software industries, then we have health tech, then we have aerospace, automobile, then we have banking and financial domain, and then we have research, and then telecom and network domain. So you can see that for all these kind of industries, there are different type of technical documents that are required as per the industry standards. And this is where, when things get more technical, engineers with good communication skills in the English language, or if you're writing for the localization, from the localization perspective, then from the local language perspective also, engineers, good engineers with good understanding of technology domain are highly needed to write such documents. Until now, the major collaborators on these kind of technical documents has been from the European region, from the US, and the other Western countries. And from India, maximum technical writers are working with the IT companies, and they work for a specific project. However, I have hardly seen many architects, product architects, having understanding of the user persona, the user perspective, and how the user will be consuming the application or consuming the APIs, SDK. So there has to be a lot of contribution from the knowledge development perspective, and at the same time, retrieval of that knowledge in the right form. So when we zero down onto what type of technical documents are needed in the industry, so I'm just going to cover them in a brief to help you understand what type of technical documents are generally used in the industry. So you'll see that for the manufacturing and industrial engineering, You have user manuals, maintenance manuals, installation guides, SOPs, assembly instructions, parts catalog. All of these are technical documents which are connected to technical interfaces. So when it is a parts catalog, it is connected with the bills of material. Bills of material is actually one of the modules within the ERP system, and where you have whatever the product or the spare parts, the parts, everything that is feeded there. So it maintains a record of all that detail, which is then used by the technical authors to create these kind of parts catalog. So this is something which is very important for the hardware manufacturing industry, automobile, healthcare. We anything related to manufacturing, we have these kind of documents needed. Assembly instructions are needed for complex machineries. And then, if we talk about the software and IT domain, then we see that it starts with the API documentation, CLI guide, user guide, release notes, installation and configuration guides, system architecture documents, SDK documentation. Beyond this, there are other documents also, like project requirement specification document, which we call as PRDs. Then there are online help documentation, which is in the form of a web help, or rather knowledge portals, which is like a complete portal where you get the entire product detailed documentation available for each and every version since the time that company has started manufacturing those products. Like Cisco is there, Juniper. If you go to their product documentation portal, you will see that how huge legacy of information they have. And same way, when we are talking about our Indian industry sector, where we are doing the research, where we are manufacturing uh, uh, some products under the Make in India initiative, how much documentation do we have? And this is where I have seen that we need more and more engineers to participate in the technical communication field. And this is an area which actually creates a path for you to become chief technology officer, CTOs, who has the entire understanding of the product, not just from the conceptual perspective but from the functional perspective also. Then in the healthcare industry, you can see that you would need the clinical evaluation reports. And so now some people will say, I'm not from the healthcare domain, I'm an engineer. But remember, all the equipments made in the healthcare sector are made by engineers, not the doctors. Doctors are the SMEs who can say what do they need. But it is the engineers who has to manufacture, who has to build those applications and the hardwares. And then there are instructions for use. So if imagine there is an MRI machine, a doctor may just want to press a button and they may want to use some features, but they need instructions. My father, he's a doctor, but till now he's unable to use smartphone because he's not least interested in the technology. But once I showed him that, hey, let's use this smartwatch to check the oxygen level and all that, then he was really impressed. He said, oh, I did not know how to use it. So as a technical person, I could explain him step by step and he got used to it. Then being a doctor, he was not so keen on learning the engineering side of it. But now, once he has understood it, he is more interested in using such applications. Then comes the regulatory submissions, where I spoke about the FDA guidelines, ISO guidelines. Then we have the product data sheets. So this is again something which is very important from the product selling maintenance point of view. Then we have training manuals. So imagine a new doctor comes on board in a MRI department or CT scan department, and they do not have training manual. Certainly they will not be allowed to use such sophisticated machines. Not only it is sophisticated, it can be extremely dangerous if not handled properly, right? And then for the research, there are certain lab protocols that has to be documented from the healthcare domain perspective. Then comes the aerospace and defense India was not into the aerospace and defense manufacturing until few years ago, until a decade ago. But now we are one of the biggest defense manufacturers, defense and aerospace. And now recently we have signed, Indian government has signed a deal with Airbus, Boeing, and all that. And we are going to have lot of maintenance related activities happening in India. So imagine that how much of documentation will be needed to train those ground engineers who will be uh, doing all the pre-flight and post-flight checks, and they would be involved in all the maintenance activities. Imagine that they do not have the right information done. And and you will not believe that if these kind of documentation are outsourced out of India, because mostly till now these activities were done outside India, although they were outsourcing it back to India, and we became the outsourcing hub. We were working on these documents, but then the major reviewers, approvers, the SMEs, subject matter expert of these kind of documents, were still or and are still sitting in Europe and in the USA, Canada, because we do not have such high level skilled people, or rather engineers, who can look into these documents from the engineering perspective and say yes, this is good to go. And this is where engineers with the technical writing mindset and technical writing understanding will be extremely helpful for the industry. So from the aerospace domain, then we go to the automotive domain. Again, here also owner's manual, service manuals, diagnostic guides, warranty documentation. These are some of these basic documentation that are highly needed in the automotive industry. And owner's manual or service manual. So an engineer coming out of the mechanical domain can very well relate to it, that if you have a, uh exploded view diagram of all the parts of an engine, you can relate that, okay, if I have to assemble that, how, in what sequence will I go, what are the part numbers that I have to adhere to or follow. So all those instructions are very well defined in the service and maintenance manuals, assembly guides, and all that kind of documentation. Then we have the fintech and BFSI. So the fintech and BFSI is a very good example. We can relate it from UPI that we have, through which we have the Google Pay, then we have Razor Pay. Just to let you know, Razor Pay documentation architecture has been done by me, and the entire architecture, how the documentation will look like, how it has to be delivered. And apart from Razorpay, I have also worked on the project for Clover, which is again one of the payment gateways used in the US market. So they come to specialized people who know the industry, who know how things work in the back end, and who know how to write and make it useful for the engineers who can consume those SDKs, APIs. And because I can use the UPI APIs to build my own fintech application for like a online payment system. And same way, ICICI Bank has their API. So if you're building if you're working with a company where you are uh, you have to integrate a payment gateway, and imagine that ICICI Bank does not provide you how to integrate those APIs. So the time taken to complete that project with a very well documented uh, uh, information set, compared with there is no document or very badly written document. So just imagine the time difference in completing such projects and the quality of projects, how it will be. And hence, you can relate that why technical documentation or technical writing is so crucial to all industries. Then in the research and academia also, these things are very important. People who will be doing masters will have to write papers, and certainly they will be using LaTeX. And LaTeX has been there in the text. Basically, it is text. So, and LaTeX is one of the for tool. So, if you will be using LaTeX, then extracting information out of latex can be very challenging, and when it comes to AI implementation, because it cannot be so easily searchable. We have recently started working on a medical domain project, and most of the medical domain projects are done in latex, because all the researchers write their papers using latex. And we were working on one of the USA database, and were supposed to extract content out of it, metadata values, and extract the logical chunks of content, and build the large language model so that the retrieval of information is easy. So until the time my engineers were trying to work through that system, they did not had any idea that how and what kind of information they should extract from the PDFs. When I and They were extracting all the junk data to build the large language model and train that model. So it was getting us all the hallucinated replies. So then I looked into their solution and I said, no, this is not going to work for us. Let's deal it, with this in a different way. Then I explained them that all the PDFs contain metadata. Let's first of all extract metadata. Then we built an abstract for the entire documentation, which was on an indexing system. Then we extracted all the data set out of those PDFs, and built the like use that entire information to train our large language model. And now we can say that we have more than 85% of accuracy in content retrieval, based on the semantic search, based on the tag enabled data. And this is where you can see how your engineering aligns. If you understand the content, if you understand what is what used where, and what is the importance of certain metadata, then that will help you understand and develop your products in a better way. And in the telecom domain, certainly OSS, BSS documentation are there, and this network design docs, troubleshooting guides, command reference manuals. So I have worked with a couple of network and telecom domain company like British Telecom, Avaya, Nokia Siemens Network, and I used to write these command reference manuals for them. But unfortunately, I never got a chance to work for Indian company who would manufacture such hardware. I have always worked for the foreign companies, and I was amazed with the fact that the kind of technical documentation they maintained, and how much importance it was given by their engineers, by their architects, that this technical information is of high importance, and eventually that became the intellectual property of these companies. Now, from bridging the gap between tech and users. So the technology and the end user have always been kind of a friend and a foe, always, because there are people like my father who never appreciates engineering side so much, and because it's difficult for him to understand. So how you people, when you engineers become tech writers, how can you bridge that gap? Because you understand engineering, and you can explain it in a better way, a much more friendlier way to the end users, who can use those applications in a more efficient way, and the user experience can be enhanced in a better way. So engineers often design brilliant systems that go underutilized. Same way, documentation ensures adoption, usability, and success. When I started working on the information side, information architecture side, in the year 2005, I was assigned on a project which is called as Data XML project. And that time in India, hardly anyone knew about Data XML framework. And it is a XML framework, and it is a tightly schema bounded architecture content system, where when you write content, you can reuse it, you can optimize that content. And I have been advocating about data for a long time. Many people said data is going to die, data will fade out, etc. But in today's date, if any technical documentation has been done in data, that is a kind of gold mine for AI developers. You can imagine, because data, first of all, is a kind of tag based, XML tag based content structure, where each and every XML tag has its own purpose, and it is semantically rich content. So AI can easily understand and interpret this kind of content, and they can build their own logic. So developing agents for working through semantic rich content is far more easier with structured content format like data. Then real world example, poor API doc. As I said, we worked with one UK company, and that company always had a challenge because they were growing, they were scaling up. They started with around 10-15 people, and 10-15 engineers, and these engineers took usually 1 year time to get an understanding of the product and do the developer documentation, or learn how to basically set up the framework environment, use certain libraries. And then I worked with them, and I told them that their major problem is that they do not have a well defined technical publication and information system. And when I implemented it for them, the entire learning period from 1 year, it reduced to 1 month. Imagine that. Now the developers has the they had the right place to locate content, and quickly set up the environment, quickly learn what libraries have to be used for what purpose, and what are the test parameters, and all that they were able to do. Then comes the API document for payment gateway. As I said, this is crucial. And as things are getting online, more and more payment gateway integration will be coming in different products. Then release notes for a mobile app, release notes for any application, web application or product is very important. So all these things that we are seeing here are extremely helpful once an engineer understands the product and they are able to document that for the products. So I say your words make code work. You know, this holds so true. I have seen it for so many years, that when a badly written document was provided to the developers could never understand things in one go, and it took a lot of time for them to start working on the project in a real sense. And in this case, the companies were going under a lot of churn. They would say, oh, this person is not a good engineer, so they would put them on bench, try to get another engineer and all that. But it's not the engineering fault, it was always the information fault, because the information was not provided to the engineers in the right way, and engineers dealt with that problem. And they also could not understand that it is the information problem, because of which they are unable to learn how this product will be developed and what are the things needed to develop a product. So you can see that when, as an engineer, you understand the domain, and when you do the documentation in the right way, then how big impact it can make for any engineering team across the world. Then I was talking about the structured documentation using Data XML. So there are many formats of structured documentation. Markdown is also considered as one of the structured documentation, but it is not. DocBook is one of the structured documentation format, which is kind of in competition to Data XML. However, DocBook is not so flexible. So data, where we hold the expertise in India. So in India, we are one of the, rather, I would say, only company that deals in developing data architecture based technical documentation projects for our clients. And there are people who are trained in data, but then they are working with big companies as the team member. But we are the specialized data people in India. And you can see that how this thing holds true when it comes to data, that you have a topic and in that you have the references, topic that contains references, has links, etc., has content, then has metadata. This way it simplifies the object of using information based on its intent for large language model and understanding the context within the content. So here you'll see that the data content is modular, reusable, and intelligent content. So it's not intelligent on its own, but it is the technical writers who have made the content intelligent by using the right data tags and creating technical documents which are usable for, or which can be used for, the AI implementation. Now, as I said, we are the company who have been working in the data side for uh, almost more than a decade now. And the benefits that it brings for the enterprises, you can see that it creates a modular, reusable, and semantically rich content. And all these multi-channel publishing, all the scalability of information can be done using AI for the data content. So data is scalable, has consistency, and can be automated. So here you get an idea of careers that blend engineering and writing. So we can see, as a technical writer, you can become API documentation specialist, information architect, content strategist, and UX writers. And this is the career map that we see, that you generally work as start as an intern, then you become a tech writer, then you manage a team of tech writers. Else you can also go to the information architect side, where you may have to work in silo. However, you will be looking at the holistic picture of the entire company's information system. And then there are managers, CTO, CEO level of activity that people do as they grow up the ladder. So, as I say, why now is the right time for engineers to become tech writers? There has been 4 decades of technical communication domain, industry domain, where the non-engineers were mostly thriving, like people from language background having uh, masters in English language, or they had the mass communication journalism background, and they would be involved because the major focus was on the grammar side of content in the past. However, when the AI thing came and it became the norm now, so the grammar can be taken care by so many tools, AI tools that has the uh, grammar abilities to fix the grammar, sentence construction, and all that. However, the content quality has was missing there in the past, is still missing, because the people now who are coming from the non-engineering background are finding it more difficult to adapt to the engineering side, and that to the high end technology side, which is kind of changing every 6 months. And this is where engineers have uh, a kind of a, a clear roadmap available, where they can contribute as a technical writer and be part of the main stream of engineers, because now they are not much called as tech writers, but they are called as information engineers. So if we go to Google, Microsoft, Technical writer is an external designation given to them. However, internally, they are information developers or information engineers. If you go towards the architecture side, then you are information architect. And that is where you understand the overall functionality of the information, how the information flow will be there, design flow, how it will be consumed, what are the formats in which it will be consumed. Let's say if AI has to consume that information, how and what AI will interpret from that information. So you can see that tech writing jobs are expected to grow 7% annually. That means as we go forward, the more and more curated content with respect to the technology domain plus the user side has to be created or at least fine tuned, cleaned up. And this, if engineers come into picture or doing tech writing job, then it becomes much more easier to do such job because they know the SDKs, or rather they can familiarize themselves with the SDKs, APIs, or the core engineering, like in the mechanical engineering, if you are talking about the exploded view diagrams, the how the parts will be working, if it is working at a certain level, how the heat will generate from that part, and all that kind of thing. So an engineer can understand things in a better way compared to a non-engineer, and hence it is very highly high in demand these days that engineers should join and become technical writers. And here you can say that there is a high demand in IT, healthcare, automotive, finance, and SaaS domain. Recently, just a month ago, we had a project from one of the customers. They specifically had a requirement that they wanted engineers with networking and telecom domain expertise to work as a technical writer in their team. And they were ready to pay 45 LPA. So that is the kind of salary they would be getting. So even from the salary point of view, there is no constraint. But fact is that there are not many engineers available to work on high-end technology projects in India. So now it's the question time, everyone, and you are free to ask questions if you have any. I will just unmute you all. If you have a question, please feel free to ask me. You can even type your questions in the chat box.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, Somesh, you are audible.
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you for this informative session. So, in this session, we basically talked about how the content, if we learn to write our technical details, or if we learn to write content in a good way that is readable, then we can better uh, we can better implement whatever ideas that we have as an engineer. We
Right.
talked about content writing and how we can blend it with our technical knowledge. I would like to know more about content creation in terms of like tutorial videos and all. What kind of scope is there for such kind of skills, and what should we need to learn to become expert in that?
Yes. So certainly, Sumesh, this is a good question. From the tutorial
Because sir,
perspective,
nowadays
yeah.
most of the content is consumed in terms of videos, and it is supposed to be easier to consume content in video format rather than some text and all. So if we want to reach a large group of people, then it would be better if we could present our knowledge in terms of a video.
Yeah, certainly, Sumesh. So, see, videos as a tutorial or tutorial videos as per se are important. They are important for the users uh, at a very basic level when there is not much of an in deep level engineering information needed. So that comes as a training material. So video tutorials are always training material, but when the videos are also created, they are created using the core content. They cannot be just created out of that core content. It has to be extracted out of the core content. Let's say you have a SDK guide, and from that SDK guide, you want to explain step by step in a tutorial format to a person that first do this, first do that, and then you explain them, correct? And for that thing, you need to have the core content. So when we are developing the tutorials, it has the information, the source information has to come from the core content, which is where if you have a redefined or a properly structured core content, then from that you can always create tutorials. For creating tutorials, there are various tools in the market, and the first level of creating a tutorial content is storyboarding. So storyboard is like I start with a very basic structure, that what is expected out of this course or the tutorial outcome, and then what kind of questions user may have in mind while learning it, and what I should be delivering. So that entire thing is part of learning, or rather instructional design, you can say. Instructional design means it is given in a very designed format, which is what we call storyboard. Based on that storyboard, then only that video tutorial, the scenarios, instances are picturized. But the storyboard is always the basic of creating any learning tutorial. So first storyboard, then the tutorial making thing
So
happens.
storyboard is like some kind of PPT presentation.
No, no, storyboard is like a script. When we talk from the cinema perspective, movie perspective, we have characters, right? That this character will say this dialogue, this character will say this dialogue, and then all those are brought in together to convey a specific message in that scene, right? So who will say what, that part is defined in the storyboard. And let's say the user is asking a question, and user says that how can I uh, create a dockerization, how can I do a dockerization for this particular this particular code, because I want that code to be implemented automatically every time. Okay, whenever a new client gets onboarded, I'm just giving you a vague scenario. So for that, this is the user requirement. For that, there will be lots of steps. So first, I'll be writing my base code. I will say this in the tutorial that first you must have the base code ready. Then you will be preparing a Dockerization script, whether it is a YAML or any other format of script. And then you will be using that to trigger creating a new Dockerized container. So if you are defining these step by step, then only it serves the purpose for the end user to understand, okay, I have to start from point A, then I have to go to point B to point C to point D, and then only my task will get completed, right? So all that thing. So PPT is one of the formats. So PP is a tool for creating storyboard. PPT itself is not a storyboard. Okay, storyboard, if I have to explain you the storyboard thing, give me a second. I'll just show you. If my screen is not visible, give me a second. I'll quickly share it with you. See here, I am talking about one of the product walkthroughs. Okay, so this is how I talk. Scene one, a cluttered screen filled with words, docs, PDFs, HTML pages scattered. Then there is a text and voiceover on that scene, which talks about legacy content everywhere, no structure, no reuse. So I'm talking about the pain point here. Then I'm talking about something happens, then it does this, then it does this. So, and then there is a background sound also coming, which says we convert chaos into structured, usable, reusable content with data, etc. So that ways we have to kind of explain things in the storyboard, and then these are brought in by the different tools. There are tools like Wondershare, then there are other tools by Adobe also. They have different tools to create tutorials, which you can use just to feed in this storyboard. Even with the AI, uh, you can just feed in this storyboard and ask the AI to create the scenes after it, and it will create it for you in a better way. But if you feed the PowerPoint presentation, then it will not work for you in the right way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Understood. I have one more question, if I may.
Yes, please.
Sir, you said that if we combine our writing skills with our technical skills, we
Hmm.
can get a better growth as an engineer. So,
Yeah.
one example of that can be like, as a researcher, I need to write research papers in LaTeX, and the motivation behind it is that sometime it will get published in some kind of journal or something, which will obviously be advantageous for my career. What are the
Hmm.
other content publishing ideas or ways are there that will
Mm.
motivate me to present the information in video format uh, and
Yeah.
also benefit me in return?
Yeah. So I'll explain it to you. Uh, Things are changing in the industry from past 10 years, I can see. Now, developers also have to document what they have done and how they have achieved it. All right. So if you do not know how to, because now with the agile method practices, there are storyboards created or user stories created. Based on the user stories, the sprints are followed. Each user story has an outcome. And at the same time, now the management in the companies also expect the engineers that when they do the development, when they write code, they should also write what this code is used for, how was it implemented, and how did you achieve the result, and what were the limitations around that code. So unless you do not know how to write it, how will you be able to express that? And then what management does, that based on all that information, they assemble it from all the developers, and then they prepare a detailed onboarding documentation, training and onboarding documentation for any new batch that will come and join the team. So now when the new team comes in, they have a ready documentation. So what they say that, okay, refer to this document and get ready within a month to start working on a project. So this is the major difference you will see now in the industry, where as a developer you would need to do the documentation. And when as a, let's say you tomorrow you become a senior developer, then the technical writer will come to interview you. Interview means when they will be writing about a product, they will come and ask you questions about the product. And if you have yourself not documented things, how will you be able to deliver it to the technical writer? Or let's say tomorrow you become a technical writer and you have to write about a product. You don't know where to start because there is no product documentation available. And this is where the major challenge happens, because when the non engineers come, they what they do that, hardly I have seen non-engineers getting and dirtying their hands to learn about that product, the technicalities of the product, and understand this what this product does. Open, like use the libraries, just run the command and test it. Whereas an engineer is always comfortable doing that because this is what they have learned. And based on that, if they do the documentation, things become much more easier. And then the companies can think, okay, why should I have a non-engineer tech writer? Because anyways they are not doing a good job, I should have an engineer with the tech writing experience. And I gave you one example of a telecom company who have reached out to us, that because they needed a team only of containing engineers who would be having experience in the networking and telecom domain, having knowledge of all the networking protocols. So that non-engineer can never provide, because non-engineers are not molded in that ways. However, engineers, the moment that you start studying in IITs, you are molded in that way, because you now know technology, now you know how to use it, now you know how to implement it. And if you combine your engineering with the writing skills, then it is like the best thing you can say to happen to an engineer. And as you grow up the ladder, you become the product architect. So if you're not able to put your thoughts in a very well documented format, and if you're unable to explain the product architecture to your team, do you think your team will be able to understand what you're trying to say? You may be able to give them different modules to develop, but then if you have to talk about the product, how will you do that? And it will take a lot of time if you're not from if you do not have the technical communication knowledge, if you're not well versed with the practices of information, uh, how exactly information is workflow is happening through the product itself. How will you be able to explain it to your team? And if anyone writes anything, how will you be able to verify that it is correct? Because language is different for everyone, correct? You may be talking in one specific language, the other person may be talking in French. But when it comes to technology, if you know a better way to express and explain it, and if your documentation is done in a better way, then that can easily be translated in a clear and concise manner for the French user, right? And there you can explain things in a better way. So, when as a technical communication person, you become part of an engineering project, your communication skills, not only from the spoken and written communication skill perspective, but from the technical communication perspective also, becomes extremely important in understanding and comprehending how much have you understood about the project, how much have you understood about the technology, and if you'll be able to deliver it in the right way or not.
Yes, sir. Understood. Thank you.
Yep. We have 2 minutes more. Does anyone have any question?
Hello, sir.
Yes, Tejvardhan.
Yes, sir. Like you explained it before, right? I don't have any kind of intention to offend you. Like I'm putting my
Can you
opinions
speak a
in
little
the
louder? I am unable to hear you clearly.
yes, sir. Is it audible?
Yeah, it is audible now.
So I don't want to offend you, but I'm just putting my opinions in the floor so that I can get suggestions. So like current as you informed, there was a lot of scope for enhanced in technical writing, but currently there are few AI tools introduced which can generate very good documents regarding like, user manuals and maintenance guides within a minute for any kind of API that we are providing them. So, like, still, do you feel that engineers are having scope in this field?
Yes, 100%. See, the current systems that are generating documentation, from where are they generating documentation? See, you can talk about a topic only if you have read about the topic, right? Same way AI is doing. It is reading from some source. So that source may not be a valid source, because when I talk about a technology, networking and telecom domain technology, it is very generic. It starts from your engineering book and it goes to all big short companies like Cisco, Juniper, British Telecom, Alcatel Lucent, and they might be having their own IP also, where they have used some combination of some information, correct? Some combination of technology, which is not available in the public domain. So there are two types of documentation available. One is available in the public domain, because that document was posted on that company's product website. That is from where it has been extracted and feeded into the chat GPT like tool, the AI tool. However, there are IPs which was never published. Now, imagine that if a person who is working in the Cisco and they have to work on some confidential project where that information can only be retrieved internally, and if there is no system implemented to maintain such intellectual property, how will that confidential project be delivered? So there has to be some method or some approach where that information has to be first feeded into the system, and then only that retrieval can happen. Because any system will work unless you do not have information available, you cannot generate information out of it. Correct? When you have fuel in your vehicle, only then you can run the vehicle. Correct? You have to put in the fuel, right? So this is the same thing with all the application software and every software. So now with the open source application development environment, most of the companies are using open source libraries, but there are still companies in the medical domain, the research domain, aerospace domain who do not use open source information at all, or even the libraries they do not use, because open source for such critical projects are unreliable. So they have to develop everything from scratch, which is what we call intellectual property. So in such cases, what example you are saying that in better documentation can be written. The documentation from a holistic point of view can be written, but granular level information cannot be written unless you as an engineer know the product. That is why when we work with any project, we work on any project, we are sometimes in companies considered as the subject matter expert, because we have done, let's say, 5 versions of the documentation and we have seen the product inside out. And that is where even the architects bring us in the meetings to discuss, okay, this is going to fail here, this is going to fail here, have you documented it, have you covered in the document? All that thing AI or such tools cannot do, where human intervention is needed. There are surgeries being performed by robots, but then doctors are needed, right? Because they are the subject matter experts. So same way here also, tech writing will always be needed, and more curated information will be needed, more refined and structured information will be needed as we go forward. We have lots of content, but in that, most of the content is not reusable. All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. So we have exceeded our time limit. I'll stop the recording and then